Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bosshole Chronicles. This is your host, John Broer, welcoming you to another installment of the Bosshole Chronicles. And today we're going to have a subject matter expert episode. And you're going to get a chance to meet a really interesting person by the name of Dana Vogelmeier. Now, I met Dana when she and I were both attending the annual conference for the Central Ohio Association of Talent and Development right here in Columbus. I was actually speaking at the conference on reinventing the manager, lessons from the Bossholes. And after my remarks, Dana came up and we had a great conversation. And not only did I learn that she had, of course, some remarkable Bosshole stories, but she took those experiences and actually put it into a book. So I asked her, I said, Dana, you got to come on and share it with the rest of the Bosshole Transformation Nation. And let me just tell you a little bit about Dana's background. She has over 25 years experience in the world of work, and that encompasses things like leadership development, training and development programs, team dynamics, elevating engagement for organizations. So she has seen an awful lot. And of course, she has a great Bosshole story, probably several, but one in particular that served as inspiration for her book. So I don't want to wait any longer. I want to jump right into it. You'll get to know more about her and really get a better feel for how she looks at people, how she looks at work, and specifically how to help keep managers out of the Bosshole zone. So let's listen in. The Bosshole Chronicles are brought to you by Real Good Ventures, a talent optimization firm helping organizations diagnose their most critical people and execution issues with world-class analytics. Make sure to check out all the resources in the show notes and be sure to follow us and share your feedback. Enjoy today's episode. Well, Dana, it is so good to have you on the Bosshole Chronicles. Welcome.
Thank you, John. It's great to be here.
And as our listeners gathered in the introduction that I had provided, you and I met not too long ago, a few weeks back, at a meeting, a conference for our very own ATD chapter here in Central Ohio. And we had such a nice conversation after the fact. And, you know, in most presentations, when I'm speaking at different conferences, I'm referencing Bossholes and reinventing the role of the manager. And you came up to me and said, hey, I got a story and I have a book. And I thought, oh my gosh, we got to get Dana on the program. So Dana, why don't we go back to the beginning? Our listeners would love to hear your story because so many of these stories turn out in a real negative way. I mean, people experience real hardship with Bossholes. Whatever hardship you may have faced, you actually turn that around to your benefit and to the benefit of others. So tell us about it.
Well, thank you again, John. I really connected with what you were saying when you were talking about Bossholes, as many people I'm sure do.
Right.
Every time I have an opportunity to, talk with groups too, inevitably someone comes up to me, just as I did to you, to tell me about their experience. And I've been in the workforce over 40 years, and during that time, you're going to have some bosses that are not that great. It's just the law of the large numbers. But I had some that were super, and then I had some that were fine. But I had a few that really were less than stellar, we'll say. And one in particular that really jumps out that I wanted to share with you, that really was it was a rough time, and really what led me to a lot of my research and later work and to the book. When I was working for this man, it was for about 5 years. And a lot of the time during that time when I would confide in my friends about what was happening, people would say, why don't you just quit? And, it was an easy question to ask. It's a hard thing to do. And I had a lot of time invested there.
Right.
It wasn't in the cards for me for whatever reason. That was not the path that I chose to go. And I was like, I'm going to
quitting is what you're talking about. Quitting was not the option you chose to go. And by the way, before the 5 years with this manager, how many years did you have vested in the organization?
20-ish.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were experienced and you had quite a resume and a track record with this company. And then this manager stepped in. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And, and I had opportunity to move up and move around the country. So I was also not in what I would call home,
Mm-hmm.
But just all a really great learning experience upon reflection. Again, just quitting was not really an option. And I just kept thinking, I need to work through this. I don't know what's going to happen here, but it is what it is, as they say, and I will figure out how to get through this.
Okay.
One of the things that I will say, just before I had this boss, the boss right before that was great. Like, couldn't have asked to work for a better boss. Just loved him, loved him. So when he left and then the new person came in, it was really rough because it was almost like I knew in the first couple of weeks, like, oh, this is going to be a rocky road. Like you could just feel it. There were a couple of comments, and I do think that, there is a feeling or an atmosphere in the workplace, and people can feel either kind of uplifted when they come in, or it can feel mucky and kind of not uninspiring.
Drag down. That's right. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. So I definitely, felt it early, but then, there were different comments made and everything. And I just had to kind of, again, work my way through it and just figure out what's my best way to maneuver in this environment. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, I'll give you an example that told me something about this person as a person. I had a peer group of about 6 other people, but not in my location. They were in the country.
Okay.
We collaborated and we worked virtually and everything. And one of the things he said to me early on was that it would be beneficial to him and to me if I could kind of give him dirt on my coworkers, so that when he and his coworkers, his peer group, were talking, he could use that to kind of boost me in the rankings. And that felt so wrong.
Evil. Oh my gosh, that's unbelievable.
Yes. And uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And those peers were my friends.
Right.
And I was like, honestly, I don't even remember what I said in reaction to the comment. Just so stunned, first of all. Again, those instincts from the early, weeks, that when he said it, it was just like, oh, I do not like this. And I didn't share that comment with anyone at work, just kind of duly noted it in my mind and saw it really as a red flag. Mm-hmm. And then, just as time progressed, there were other things that happened, different experiences. And again, kind of thinking, how am I going to work through this? But what was happening to me was feeling really deflated. And I had always been what I thought, pretty an engaged employee.
Right.
Working hard and trying to, do a good job and looking for other opportunity, granted. And mm-hmm. I tried to give it my all. It was hard to do that in this environment. Mm-hmm. Felt very deflated. And in the morning when I would be driving in, I would just kind of have to mentally prepare myself and talk myself into, figure this out. Just get better, figure it out. So again, over 5 years, but during that time, I didn't always realize that then there were pockets of it, but like I became depressed. I gained a lot of weight. And I struggled just with engaging with life even. Mm-hmm. You felt so beaten down all the time. And I really am a believer. And there's a great book called Everybody Matters by a CEO of an organization named Bob Chapman. And he talks about this in his book. When I saw a video about him, so I bought the book. But he talks about that too, like the way you make people feel impacts their home life. And so if you build people up when they're at work, then they go home and they're better spouses, they're better parents, they're nicer in the community. But if you beat people down at work, then they're not better spouses. They're beaten down and they go feeling that way. And it's that old adage about, you go home and kick the dog. And I would never kick my dog, but that's how you felt. And so it ripples. And the philosophy that he talks about that I'm a believer in is if we all had really good workplaces and engaged employees and leaders who were, leading with heart, compassion, and empathy, then people would feel better at work. And therefore we'd have the ripple effect, we'd have a better community and a better world. Yeah. So I was, again, not realizing all of that at the time, but upon reflection, it was true. I can see how I just became disengaged
Mm-hmm.
in not only that, not only work, but just, home life too. So with
Dana, oh,
time,
I'm sorry, Dana, if I may, really quick, the contrast you provide of the manager prior to this one about how a manager can make you feel. I'm reminded a few weeks ago, we had a gentleman on the podcast by the name of Kurt Green. He is a master Vistage chair out of Kentucky. And he was talking about Catherine Schaefer's 4 questions. Have you ever heard about this? The 4 questions are: do you see me? Do you care that I am here? Am I enough for you? Or do you need me to be better in some way? And finally, can I tell that I'm special by the way you look at me? And I think those are the leaders you're talking about, the managers that convey that. And it's like, I want to be here. I'm engaged. But when you don't have that, all of a sudden it really erodes. It really kind of erodes and poisons your soul to the point where all of a sudden I am feeling this and experiencing this. It's manifesting itself physically, not just emotionally or psychologically. Physically, I'm feeling this. So thank you for that. I just wanted to really point out that everybody has a boss hole story, and bad managers are frustrating, but the impact is pretty significant.
And we will be right back.
With employee disengagement at its highest level in 9 years, your company can't afford to miss the mark when it comes to optimizing your hiring, management, and team performance practices. At its lowest level, employee turnover costs you $11,000 per person. And those are dollars you can easily save with the right set of people analytics. Real Good Ventures is a talent optimization consultancy specializing in world-class analytics specific to your people and the critical role they play within your organization. Gain confidence in your hiring practices, keep the boss holes from driving your talent away, design your teams for flawless execution, and create a culture that offers meaning and fulfillment. Real Good Ventures has a family of validated diagnostic tools specific to the human aspect of business, because we know that all business issues are people issues. Visit us today at www.realgoodventures.com and bring meaning and fulfillment back into your workplace.
Okay, let's get back to the program.
All right. So you're talking about getting back home, or when you would go ahead, pick that back up. Sorry.
okay. No, that was awesome. And I love those. I wrote those questions down. Yeah. So I was feeling unengaged and uninspired, just, in life, not just at work, but also.
Right.
So over time and, kind of looking at options and how can I get out of this situation? I need to get out of this situation. There was an opportunity, and where I was living at the time, there weren't a lot of opportunities with the organization. You'd have to relocate, and wasn't ready to relocate at the time. I did later, but not right at the time. So an opening came up that was a step down,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I'm gonna apply for it, and cross my fingers, hope it works out. So I did, and I went to the other role, the new role, and had a new boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was awesome. He was
Another awesome one.
amazing.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you think about just in that time there, going from great to not great at all, and then great again, started feeling very inspired and engaged.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, he was a very good listener. He was also just an encourager, where before I was not having any of that at all. So he was a really good encourager. And so then life started changing again.
Mm-hmm.
And I got kind of, back to the program, and then I lost the weight, and started focusing on life a little differently. And so again, upon reflection and looking at all of that, I was like, man, to your point, what a difference, and I do take ownership. I mean, I often look back at like, what role did I have in that? And, there were several things that I learned, and that's just part of who I am. I am a big reflector, and maybe sometimes too much, where you kind of think overthink it. But I learned so much during that experience. And even though it was painful and not one I care to repeat, I'm grateful that I had it because it got me here. And that's where, even while, I was in that new role and then in future roles still today, it makes me a better employee having gone through that.
Well, and that's a very, well, that shows wisdom, that shows maturity. And at the same time, you could very easily see how people could harbor a huge amount of resentment and even blame themselves. The story they tell themselves in their head. Why am I here? I often think that sometimes God gives us the answer before we know the question. And it's like, why do I have to work for this person? Why am I being tortured? And at the same time, Dana, what I love is you ask the question, well, what am I supposed to learn from this? And what is my contribution? Am I doing something? And there are times where, with that reflection, that emotional intelligence, that self-awareness, it's like, oh, you know what? I could do a better job to facilitate a relationship here. But we've heard plenty of stories where people have said, I'm going to try to go the extra mile, and the boss hole just doesn't meet them there. I mean, we're dealing with just somebody who should not be allowed to manage other people. But I give you credit for asking those questions, because I think that's part of how we grow as professionals. And as you said, it's made you who you are today, and clearly was inspiration enough to write a book about it, which we'll get to in a second. Let's back up for 1 sec. So this manager, this boss hole, the bad one, you had the good one, the bad one, the good one. The bad one, do you know where this manager is now, or any idea? Don't care, I'm sure, but any idea?
I don't know. No.
Okay.
It was, many years ago, but so I don't know.
Okay. And when you left and by the way, just so nobody missed it, you voluntarily took a step down, a demotion, if you will,
I did.
to get away from a particular manager. That to me is unconscionable. You have somebody who is, for whatever, I mean, you clearly had established yourself with a good reputation and credibility. You've been there 20 years. To have to make that step just to get away from a manager, if I think any company, if that's happening, you really need to think very carefully about why and how you are promoting people into management roles. And by the way, one other question, because this always fascinates me: was this an internal promotion for this manager, or was this somebody that came in from the outside?
It was an internal.
And did this manager, to your knowledge, have that reputation before arriving, or you did not know?
I didn't know. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My guess is based on what we've learned in the 3 years of doing the podcast, but also in the nearly 30 years of doing this kind of work that I have, there are probably plenty of bodies in this person's wake to some degree. Okay. So dark times, you grew, you emerged stronger, better, more insightful, and you wrote a book. And the book is entitled, and by the way, go to the show notes. You will find a link to be able to get Dana's book. It is called The Workplace Atmosphere. Actually, give us the full title, if you will.
I will. So yes, it is The Workplace Atmosphere, Transforming the Dismal to the Desired. So kind of based again on my experience, like I had a dismal experience. What is the desired experience that we all want? It's not just, me and you, like we all want a good workplace and to feel good and feel valued and like we're contributing and part of something bigger than ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if you're a leader that can inspire and create that kind of an atmosphere in your workplace, people will go over and above the call of duty for you. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. They'll show up, they'll do a great job, they'll offer to do more work, they'll problem solve, they'll do all those things, they'll be innovative, but you've got to create that kind of an environment where people feel valued and appreciated. They feel psychologically safe. They can contribute, and you want them to contribute.
Why is that such a revelation now? I don't know. I don't understand why that all of a sudden these days, it's like in the last, 5, 10, 15 years, it's like what people want to feel valued in the workplace. How is that so revolutionary?
That is such a good question, John. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense because what I what I believe is that many of it, I mean, if you've been in the workplace for any amount of time, you've probably had good and bad bosses.
Sure.
So, to all of the listeners, like, how you felt when someone inspired you and appreciated you, and how you felt when you were not valued. So if we just think about that and what are the little tweaks along the way that we can do to kind of change the atmosphere, it doesn't always have to be a grand gesture. It's saying thank you and pointing out, good work. It doesn't have to be big. And, actually, when I left that organization, I looked, cleaning out my desk for the last time, right? I had saved like a stack of cards that people had given me, either when I left a department, like a good luck card or something like that, or when I did a good job and somebody was just saying thank you or whatever. And I still have them. They were so meaningful and cost almost nothing, but taking the time to do it and making it meaningful is the thing, so that people can create that kind of an atmosphere in the workplace, but you do have to work at it.
Yes, I think there's an intentionality. You have to be intentional about it. And I love the point you make, Dana, that it doesn't have to be grandiose. If you just simply think about acknowledging and showing appreciation and interest and, investing your time and listening, and just simply a thank you. I know that I asked you to do this and it's part of your job, but still, acknowledgement and thank you is very powerful and just human. At Real Good Ventures, well, first of all, and I want to make sure everybody knows, you may be thinking, wow, John, you're being really harsh on this manager that Dana had. Yeah, I am. I'm also calling out the company, because to allow that to happen, it happens all the time. And our companies need to be more conscientious about the people they're putting in supervisory and management roles. Doing so without training, doing so without understanding what your role is, and that is developing other people, you are shoving them into the boss hole zone. So to some degree, I could even acknowledge that this former manager of yours didn't know any better, and it just perpetuated this situation, because nobody is born to be a boss hole. It's just that we can't allow them to discourage, diminish, disengage, or create that level of disengagement to where people are literally, their lives are being impacted negatively in that way. We invest a lot of time at work. The return on that investment ought to be good. But one of the things that we talk about at Real Good Ventures is, and you just said this, Dana, what we say is that everybody wants to be part of a healthy cause. Nobody goes into a role or a job thinking, I hope this sucks. I hope I'm miserable. I hope you diminish me and make me and marginalize me. Nobody does that. So it's really not that hard to lift that atmosphere, that culture, which is what you're talking about in your book, and making it gratifying and rewarding in ways that go way, way, way beyond compensation or position or title. So back to the book really quick, Dana. Who is your audience? You wrote this book to somebody. So who is that?
Yeah. So primarily I targeted to first line or new leaders, because some of the things that we learn, I'm going to call it in our leadership training programs or onboard, it really doesn't touch on things like, there might be some about building relationships and connecting with your team members, but how do you do that? And listening to people, as we've talked about, and making the time. I talked to somebody just recently who told me that they have had a 10-minute one-on-one with their leader. And I was like, so are your one-on-ones always 10 minutes? And I was like, yeah, that's right. It was just like, that is not investing time in that person.
Right. That's checking a box.
Yes. Well said. So what kind of return are you going to get on that investment? But if you do take the time. So it's things like that again are not kind of taught in our onboarding or a foundational leadership program, unless you have one that touches on things like demonstrating empathy, gathering all of the information, because sometimes, as leaders, we think we know best, and maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah.
And so are you listening to what people's obstacles are, and can you help remove their obstacles? Things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Really, a lot of it is around connecting with people. And, a lot of times you hear the language today about meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So not every employee wants what you want. Not every employee is going to be as engaged as you are, or have the work ethic that you have, or think the way that you do. We all see the world very differently.
Yeah.
Can you invest some time in understanding how they see the world, and therefore their behavior that you might think, why would you do that or think that or say that? But it made sense to them. If you know them, if you get to know them and spend time with them, then those things start to make sense to you, and you know how to better engage with them in the future.
You make me want to encourage everybody that listens in. And over the last 3 years, the boss, we call it the Bosshole Transformation Nation. I mean, it's really grown. We've got lots and lots of people listening into the podcast. But for all of those people that have, obviously we all have Bosshole stories, but I think to your point, when you have a great manager, just as we want to get encouragement from our managers and acknowledgement, I think we need to share that back with them. So this would be an encouragement to all of you listening in and who have a great manager right now. Let them know that. Just say, hey, listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate when you acknowledge when this happens or this happens, because we just recently had a 2-part episode with Dr. Bill Shaniger, formerly with McKinsey. He and a few of his colleagues co-wrote a book called Power to the Middle, because right now, and statistically speaking, middle managers are burning out. They are struggling right now. I think part of it is done because we elevate people into management and supervisory roles without the right training. And at the same time, the marketplace is tough. The battle for labor and talent is tough. And this hybrid workforce now, the world of work has totally changed. And we really haven't equipped them for it. So when you do have that great manager, non-Bosshole, as we would say, let them know that. I think that's really powerful because I can, as a manager, I always appreciated it when somebody acknowledged that they recognized I was really trying to do my very best, and when it worked, I'd like to know that it worked. So anyway, that you made me think of that. You inspired me to think of that, Dana.
I'm glad you said that too, because where I am now and the boss I have now, she's great, and so I am going to tell her that.
Well, listen. So a reminder to everybody: get the show notes. If you want to connect with Dana via LinkedIn, her LinkedIn profile, link to her LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes, and especially a link to her book. Dana, let me ask you this: what's I don't know, what's next? What's on the horizon for you? Anything fun, new, or exciting?
So the organization that I work for now, we are a member organization. So companies, usually small to mid-sized companies, a lot of times organizations that don't have their own HR shop. So we help them with all things HR. And really what I'm working now is in the learning and development space.
Mm-hmm.
So writing programs and sometimes facilitating leadership programs, and really enjoying the work. So it's nice. And it's a great company, great atmosphere. And just really happy that worked out this way.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I can put a link to the organization in the show notes as well. Just share with our listeners the name of the organization.
Yeah, it's MRA. So it's the Management Association. And again, we're an association. So companies are members. And
right.
So sometimes we go into their organization and do facilitated training. Sometimes we do things that are more, I'll call it public. And then anybody can go to that too.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, Dana, thank you so much for sharing your story, the inspiration behind your book, The Workplace Atmosphere. Make sure everybody goes in and check out the show notes, learn more about this great publication and Dana's great work. Great having you on the Bosshole Chronicles. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Keep checking out those new episodes. Give us your feedback. Follow the podcast. And it was great having you this week. And we'll see you next time on the Bosshole Chronicles. We'd like to thank our guest today on the Bosshole Chronicles. And if you have a Bosshole Chronicles story of your own, please email us at mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. Once again, mystory@thebossholechronicles.com. thebossholechronicles.com. We'll see you again soon.